Hey, and welcome back to the I Was Raised in a Religious Cult Stories from the Other Side podcast. My name is Scar, and my partner Japan is here for moral support as well as to fill in any blanks, so say hello.
I'm here. Hello.
I just wanted to put a little trigger warning before we get into this. I'm going to be talking about child abuse as well as religious abuse, which I do feel like is pretty much my whole podcast, to be fair. But I'm gonna be talking about it a little bit more, especially with some things that I experienced at school from teachers and other students. If that's something that is upsetting to you, just keep that in mind before continuing. Last episode, we were talking about my school and early life as a Jehovah's Witness. I was going to start talking more about how basically it was all progressing because by this point my parents were baptized. They were, I guess, fully fledged Jehovah's Witnesses at this point, just fully in it now. And this episode is going to be centralized more around my life before, or the summer before second grade and around second grade, because there was a lot that was kind of going on around this time. And it's also some of my earliest memories of just like that early starting time as Jehovah's Witnesses. So I remember around this time, the timelines for my life are going to be sometimes maybe a little wonky or not entirely accurate. I'm remembering it as well as I can, considering that a lot of my memories are just simply gone from my brain because of trauma and repressed memories. It's a whole thing, so I'll do my best. I was going to talk a little bit here at the start about how not entirely sure when we started going out in service, which for those that don't know, going out in service for a Jehovah's Witness basically is what they call going out to preach or going door to door to other people, which most people are somewhat familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses and how they do that. I'm sure you've had somebody knock at your door to give you magazines. I don't know if they do that anymore though. I think they've stopped doing that, but at least for me growing up, that was a big thing. And I was being encouraged to go out in service, which for a very timid little kid was not an easy feat. I had a lot of anxiety. I don't know if I did have social anxiety. I don't know if it was because of my autism or what it exactly was, or if it was just general anxiety. It could have just been that too, but I mean, to be fair, I think going door to door is just a scary thing, and no matter who you are. But it was really scary. And I remember one of the first times I ever went out in service, and because what they do is they encourage little kids to to memorize these presentations and go up to try to give people magazines, which I think is actually a little bit manipulative on Jehovah's Witnesses' part. They use kids to kind of put their propaganda out there through little kids, because when you have a little kid come up to your door and be like, "Hi, I'm like 5 or 7 and I'm gonna give you a magazine," like you can't say, it's hard to say no. I will say it is not entirely impossible, because I have a very specific memory of the very first time I went to do one of my little presentations. I'm so sorry, my breathing might be a little weird. I'm having anxiety talking about this. It's just hard to
All
cover
good.
these
It's very hard.
things. So I'm breathing a little weird right now because I'm trying not to have a panic attack. So the first time I ever went out in service, I remember I went to the door with the woman who had one of the brain. I went to the door with one of the people that studied the Bible with my family to bring us into becoming Jehovah's Witnesses. And her and I went to the door, and we get to the door, and we knock. We do the thing where we knock, and from inside the house we hear this woman say, "Come on in." And I'm like, looking at her, I'm like, what? That's weird. And So like we knock again and she's like, "Come on in." And we're like, "You don't know us. Like you're just inviting strangers into your house." So she comes to the door and I start to do my little presentation and I'm shaking and I'm scared and she's like, "Goodbye." And she like slams the door in my face and I'm just like, what did I do wrong? Like what do I do now? So that was like not a great start to all of this, which in general it was such a stressful thing to do. And like I said, I think it's a very predatory thing to have kids be the one to put your message out there. I don't know, it just gives me ickiness, and especially being a kid that had to do it was really upsetting and strange. And I think something else I was going to talk about that was a little weird. This isn't weird. My brain is not braining. Hello. One of the things, I'm not segueing well, but I was going to talk about how the couple that studied with us they didn't have kids, but they really wanted kids. I don't think that they were able to have kids. I think it was medically like incapable of having kids. So, which I don't know why they didn't adopt. But you know, it is their businesses. So they really liked having my brother and I over for sleepovers, which
Yeah, every time you say that story, it does not sound at all good. Like, there's a lot to unpack with that story.
yeah, because they would always try to get like information out of my brother and I about like our family or my parents. And so before we would go over to their house, my mom would coach us on what we're allowed to talk about and what we're not allowed to talk about. And that was...
But just put a little earworm, and not to spoil anything like for the future thing, because I've always thought about this, and I meant to mention it next time you said this story. Knowing what your parents did, and you'll get to it. Do you feel like it was maybe less about that, or did they think that those people would ask the right questions that could expose them for what they were doing and like the abuse that they were doing at home?
That actually, as
Like...
I was telling that part, it was something in the back of my head that I was thinking about. I don't know.
Yeah, like I don't mean to like it's like such a tangent, and I know you're gonna get to something like that is like so much further along the line, and it's so much major, and like I know you're gonna get to it, but that's how I always thought. I was like, it feels like it's coaching, especially with a lot of the stuff that they've did in the future times and how they kept you away from doctors and stuff like that. Normally, people that are in an abusive house, which like you've kind of explained a little bit, but not fully, that your house was not the greatest growing into, but like you would literally villainize other people, which like those people are probably really, they sound creepy as hell anyways.
Yeah.
And like a lot of those people at that congregation was bad people, but like was that also them protecting themselves because they knew maybe that they would find out something that they were trying to hide?
Yeah, that's a good question. That really is, because I wonder it myself, because there was a lot happening. Like, we ended up getting very abused by the people in this congregation, and my mom didn't like us talking about stuff. My mom was always very, very private about her life and everything, and I really don't know how much of that was just her wanting to be a private person and keep her business to herself and her own trauma, or if it was because they were trying to hide some things that were happening in our home, which, like, my partner just said that's stuff that I plan on getting to at a later time because it'll make sense for the storyline. But yeah. I do wonder. I don't know. I really don't know, because there were a lot of things. It was just, I think, oh God, like, weird thing here. So a thing about autism is masking, which is exhausting. It's an exhausting thing. I was constantly masking. It started so young because I just wanted to try to be a normal person, which I overcompensated for anyway, because I mentioned in my last episode how we were just weird kids because we were being raised in a cult already. And, you know, everybody just thought we were weird, so I was trying to overcompensate for that anyway, to be like the most normal I could be. And I remember they would always ask us a whole bunch of questions and try to get a lot of information out of us. And I do have like a very like specific memory of going over to their house, which, okay, these people were stupid rich, like very, very rich. And it was very noticeable, especially in the area I grew up in. I grew up in a very poor area. We were very poor growing up. So we went to this mansion. It was like the old school Southern houses, like racist people houses. Oh, like plantation houses. I couldn't think of the word.
Plantation houses.
So they had like this massive mansion plantation house. Like I've even heard that they had, unfortunately, like slaves working for them back in the day. Like, I've heard that now, and I know that about them now. So like, not even it wasn't that long ago kind of thing. And you know, growing up in the middle of Arkansas, that kind of stuff, you know, was pretty prevalent. I grew up in a pretty white area, and if you were a minority, you did not fare well, which I will be talking about some of that once it kind of gets to that point and how that affected things at school and things that I saw. But they had this big house, and the couple that studied with us, the house that they had, it was a weird situation. They were living with the guy, he was of the family, and she married into the family. And they lived in like an apartment area of the mansion. Like, it was the mansion, and then they built an apartment, or had an apartment area. And so the apartment was 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that went into like a living room. Like, I'm trying to remember there's like a portion of this that's missing. I can only remember specific rooms. I do remember they had like this huge storage room, which was really weird. And they had these windows, these huge windows that were inside to a different part of the house, which they had this giant, like, heated indoor pool. Like, they're rich. Like, not a lot of people have indoor heated pools. So it was so weird, you know, like, to be going to this. I grew up in a trailer, you know, and I'm going to this giant mansion, and I'm just like, whoa. And they would like buy my brother and I toys, and I was extremely aware of the cost of things because my mom made sure I was. And they took us to like Walmart, and I asked for like an easy bake oven. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, God, why did I took advantage of a situation, I guess. I don't know if that makes me a bad person. I was very young.
Doesn't make you a bad person at all. I mean, any kid, for one, would have that that type of thing. And also, you know, when people offer like that, you're not really thinking you're taking advantage of them, because you're just
we
like,
couldn't afford
oh,
that.
well, they offer.
And I saw it on TV, and I was like,
but I think your brain knew that they could, you know, like this was a drop. This was pennies for them, and compared to, you know,
no, this would have been like, this was out of the realm of possibility, and I kept seeing it on TV, and I wanted one so bad.
You're a kid. You should never feel bad about that type of stuff.
My brother got a toy too. I don't remember what toy he got, but so it was just such a weird separation. I think this was a weird thing about my life, and it's always been, is there were always just like, here's my life at school. Here's my life in the religion. Here's my life at home. These are all separate things. Here's my life weirdly convulging from I was like, it was like I was different people in these different places because I had to be. And so I was in this different house, this very rich house, and it was like spotless and it smelled really good, and they had this really plush carpet and like fluffy furniture and just nice stuff. And it was just weird. It was just weird. And then I have to go back home, and the summer before second grade was really tough. We were super poor. The refrigerator had stopped working at home, which my parents couldn't afford to pay for. And I think I'll probably talk about this more later, but there was always an issue with my dad and work. My dad's was a carpenter, and getting him to work was just like really hard. My mom struggled he just never wanted to work. He would go to work, but and that was another problem, is sometimes he would come home and there would be nothing left of his paycheck, and he's like, oh, it was because I had to commute. The commute was like, what is the commute from there? Like, what, 45 minutes tops?
Yeah, 45 minutes, yeah, not much.
Tops, and he would be like, oh, well, it's so expensive to go over here, and he would come home and have just pennies left of his paycheck, or not much. And that was money was the big fight in our family. And my parents were struggling to put food on the table, to keep the electricity on. This was all stuff from a very young age. My parents never hid stuff from us. They were always very, very open about everything that was going wrong. And that was really stressful to me. I would take on this. It's like how I mentioned I was my mom's emotional support, and it all started early, and I think maybe I took some of that on just on my own. I don't know. But we were super poor, and I remember this summer I was saving up to go to Disney World. Every kid kind of was like, oh my god, I want to go to Disney World. Oh. That was like the whole thing. And I had this jar that I was putting little change into, and my parents got so poor that my dad was starting to ask for money. And I was always like a super generous kid. I've always like, I will give you anything that I have. If I have the money, or if I have whatever, I will give it to you if you need it. So he would be like, hey, can I get, whatever? And I'd be like, yeah, of course. And he'd come and ask again, and I'd be like, of course. And then I was made more aware of the money situation, so I took my little jar of change, and I was like, you guys need this. So I gave him the jar of change, and I was so disappointed that, like, I didn't know. That was something I didn't understand, is how expensive it is to travel and go somewhere. Because I think the closest one would have been, like, Florida. And
yeah, Orlando.
Yeah. We never could have afforded that, ever. Like, ever. So, I don't know. I didn't realize how expensive it would be, and I don't think my parents realized how important it was to me, so I was pretty crushed. So that we'll kind of move in, and I dropped that information for a few reasons, but I started the second grade, and I'll get into why more of that kind of ties into the next part in just a moment. I was going to mention that around, I think it's about when I started second grade, my mom started a cleaning job at Boeing, which a big thing for Jehovah's Witnesses is that they love cleaning jobs, like night cleaning jobs, like janitorial jobs, because it's easy to do a job like that and then be a full-time servant of Jehovah, as far as like going out in service, doing your due diligence, studying all the time. So that was a huge deal for her to get this job. And once she started that job, I think she also got her sister in on the job to work with her. And so around this time, second grade started, and my brother and I would get home from school, and there would be this period of time from when we got home from school to before my mom got home, and we were a little too young to be home alone, that she started getting us babysitters. Some of them were some teenage boys from down the road that would come over and watch us, or my brother's girlfriend at the time. And I started a weird, I don't know if compulsion's the right word. If it is incorrect, I'm sorry. I think compulsion's the correct word. I think it's
Correct.
Okay, I started calling. I would get home and I would go to the phone and I knew better. That's the thing. And I would start calling 911 like every day. Like every day. And I'd call 911 and then they'd be like, 911, what's your emergency? And I would panic and slam the phone down. I couldn't stop myself. I had to do it. I couldn't stop. I knew I was doing something wrong. And I remember just being like, and it was, and there were big consequences. I would get spanked like really bad every time I would do this, but I just could not stop myself. And so it was really frustrating to be getting punished when I just couldn't stop. I don't know why. I just, dang it. I don't want to cry.
Okay.
I'll explain later down the line on the podcast why I think I started this and why it started happening. I'm not ready to talk about that yet, but I believe there was a reason why it started, and then I think it also maybe was like a OCD thing too. I think it was a few things lumped together. And, you know, it was a really frustrating thing too, because my babysitters would always tell on me, and then obviously the emergency services were calling my mom and dad and being like, hey, you guys are going to start getting, like, you can't do this. Why are you guys calling 911? And they're like, yeah, I'm so sorry, it's my kid. But it was just, I would come home and it was right when my mom started. And I also kind of had these like meltdowns when my mom was going to work, and it wasn't that I necessarily missed her, but I said it was, and I would start crying because I didn't want her to go to work at night, and I didn't know why. I just knew that I was scared and I didn't want her to. And so like my babysitters would tell on me, which really made me mad, because I don't know why they trusted teenage boys to watch two kids. Oh my god, like we almost caught the house on fire one time because they were like, my brother was like, hey, I want to see what would happen if we light this napkin on fire. They're like, yeah, that's like a good idea. Well, the thing like combusted into flames. They panic and drop it on the floor, and it catches the floor on fire. Thankfully it got put out, but it burned the floor. They never told. And it made me so mad because I'm like, y'all will tell on me calling 911, but this, you know, and one thing I will say about me is I was no snitch. Never been a snitch. I will die with stuff if I need to, which was so annoying. So I was like, I can't be a tattletale. And I think part of that came from if I would tell on my brother, my dad would be like, don't be a tattletale. And I'm just like, I'm so confused because you guys tell me to like tell you guys if something's happening, but then if I do, I get in trouble for telling. But I'm not a snitch. So my mom was working at Boeing and cleaning at night, and her sister started having issues. And I remember I remember the conversations my parents would have about the way they were fighting and stuff. And my mom's like, oh, it's because she wants to be like, you know, head of me. She wants to like, I think they were both going for like head janitor job or something. So that I think it paid better or whatever. And my mom's like, oh, she just wants to be Little Miss head toilet bowl cleaner. It's not that deep, kind of is how my mom would come home and explain the issues. But a few years back, I reconnected with my cousin. This is my cousin Denver, by the way, that I had mentioned. So his mom was the one working, you know, and that aunt. And I found out when I reconnected with him a few years ago, he's like, well, the way my mom told it was, your mom kept trying to leave Jehovah's Witness magazines in people's desk drawers or on top of their desks at Boeing. And my mom kept telling your mom, hey, that's probably going to get us fired. Don't do that. Which, knowing the way that my mom lies or twists stories, I 100% believe that. And that definitely sounds like something my mom would do.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, she's done that kind of stuff. And it made me so, my mom told so many stories about that aunt as I grew up that I think absolutely fractured my relationship with that aunt when we were so close. I was talking to you about this the other day too.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so frustrating that my mom, she would do this and, manipulate it. But anyway, so, and one more thing about her working at Boeing. Right before my mom and dad got baptized, they made my mom stop working at Boeing because they said that it conflicted with her being a Jehovah's Witness, because I think Boeing makes something for the military or something like that.
Yeah, I believe they do.
Yeah, it's something stupid like that. So they were like, well, we don't get involved with wars. That's against the religion. So you need to stop because you're like, it's so stupid and convoluted. Like,
Yeah.
she's cleaning up trash and buffing floors. But somehow that supports the military. But it was so hypocritical because there's a lot of people that work at Boeing. I think my uncle, who is currently still a Jehovah's Witness, works at Boeing. So I'm just saying it's a joke. So, whatever. So we're going to go ahead and switch back to school. So second grade started. I just have very strong memories of my very first day of second grade. So one thing about me is I loved school growing up. I adored school, but this day was not a good day. So I go in, I get there before my best friend that I had made in kindergarten, Lily, and I get there, and the way they had the seats set up is it was 2 by 2, and I went and I got 2 seats right next to each other. I shut down any kid that tried to sit next to me. I'd be like, no, this is for my best friend. And she gets there and I'm like, Lily, I saved seats. And so she gets there, she puts her stuff down, and we're giggling and talking about how excited we are to see each other. And then I needed to go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, and by the time I get back, someone's sitting in my seat. It's some boy that I've never seen. And I'm like, excuse me, what? That's my seat, but all my stuff is gone, and I had already unpacked. They literally took all of my stuff out of the desk, my backpack, my jacket, whatever, and just thrown it on a different desk. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, so this is my cousin, and he got held back a year, and so he wasn't with his friends anymore. And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna sit with him instead. Which I was just kind of like, excuse me? This is my seat that I saved for us, and you're going to give my seat up. It crushed me. Actually, that we were not best friends after that. That best friendship was donezo. I was so hurt that she did that and threw my stuff over to the side. I was having a tough first day. I think there were a few other things that happened that day, but that crushed me. I felt so heartbroken. So my teacher was like, hey, why don't we, to get into our first day of school, everybody write me a, I don't know if essay maybe, about how your summer was, what happened. Mine was so sad. I think it was just all the sadness of the summer kind of hit. And so I wrote this really sad essay about how we were poor and we couldn't afford anything. And then I think I ended it by talking about how, I had talked about how the fridge broke and we couldn't afford anything. And my mom was going to work and wasn't around anymore. And then how we were super poor and how I couldn't go to Disney and I had to give all my money to my parents. I'm very... my teacher didn't say anything to my parents, as far as I know, which...
How do you, though?
That's true. That is true, but...
I wouldn't touch that one with 10 people.
It was so sad. And second grade just really didn't get easier for me. I really started struggling with math, and I also could not, for the life of me, understand how to read a freaking clock. And this was when they were starting to teach it. I just could not grasp the concept, and it was just a really tough year, and my teacher was really mean to me about it. And this was actually around the time when, I don't think I've talked about this, so I love writing. I write poetry, like I'll write anything. And this is when I started leaning into my writing. And I remember we wrote a lot of essays, you know, I think it was just to get us familiar with words and everything. And I remember I would make these essays and I would use like really long words that I had learned, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, these are so good." I was like really proud of myself. But the problem was this year my teacher hated me. And I firmly believe it was because I was Jehovah's Witness. I like one of the first things, cuz you know, you start towards the end of the year getting into this Christmas time, and my teacher was talking about Santa Claus to the kids or something, and I thought by this point everybody knew Santa Claus wasn't real, so I didn't really think it was out of pocket for me to say this, but I was like, Santa Claus isn't real. And like, I swear the air got sucked out of that room. Whole room is silent. My teacher looks me in the eye. I swear to God, I swear something like flashed into her eyes, like she was possessed, and she like floats across that room straight towards me, and she grabbed my arm, and she had like those like long acrylic nails, and she grabs my arm as hard as she can, and she gets in my face, and she starts digging her nails into my arm, and she gets so close to my face that like her hot breath like went onto my face and like spittle like went out on my face. She's like, "Don't burst their bubble." And like, this scared the hell out of me. I was like, whoa. And like, she lets my arm go, and she clawed my arm until it bled. And I'm just like, looking back, I'm like, if a teacher did that to my kid, we would not be seeing. I'd be like, get them out of this class. Like, you can't, like, that's abuse, you know? I didn't know better. I didn't know better that I wasn't supposed to say that. And for her to be so nasty to me, like I said, she had a problem with the fact that I was Jehovah's Witness. How was it my fault that I was being raised in a cult? Like, that was not my fault. And I just look back on that and I just, And then I also started getting bullied at school in second grade, specifically by this one kid who was like 2 years older than me. And he was a jerk. I found out later in life that he was getting abused at home, or like mainly he was watching his dad beat his mom. Not great. That's a very common theme for where I grew up, unfortunately. And I think maybe he learned it from his dad, but basically he would hunt me down every recess. And like, keep in mind, this kid is 2 years older than me, and I was a very small child. And he would hunt me down every day at recess. I would hide in the slide, I would hide in the tunnels, he would find me. And he'd be like, "Run." And if I didn't run, it would be worse. So he would chase me down. Probably what made me a fast runner. He would chase me down, and he would not stop chasing me until he could reach up to me and push me down as hard as he could, which I went through so many pairs of pants. It would rip holes in my jeans or my pants and like make my knees bloody. He was a jerk. And then I had a lot of problems with like older kids or like my brother's friends. They would bully me and like chase me down and beat me up. I don't know. It was not sad. It was not. Yeah, it was sad. It was bad. And then I was also struggling with my self-confidence because I was struggling with school, which was like something that normally I enjoyed. And then I had a teacher that wasn't really helping me because she didn't like me. And a big thing with a lot of neurodivergent people is struggling with self-confidence. So it was for a lot of reasons, but that's also another. And I remember I was a really, really fast runner, and I was so proud of this. And my self-confidence would hold me back in a lot of stuff. Like, I was by far the fastest runner in my grade and at least a few grades around me. And I remember on rainy days we would have to have recess in the gym because, you know, you can't have a bunch of kids going out on a muddy playground when it's raining. So we would have recess in the gym, And usually what that meant is we would have races with like the elementary 5th and 6th graders. Is 5th and 6th grade considered elementary or middle school?
It depends on the school.
Okay, I'm not sure then. I know they
Yeah, it
separated
goes
the
kind
5th
of.
and 6th graders from in a separate building. And we would all line up in the gym and like they would do races by grade, and then whoever from those grades won, all the winners of each grade would do a final race. And I would throw the races because I just wasn't confident in myself, and like I knew I could run faster than that, but I would just throw them because I just didn't feel confident in myself. And I was so frustrated with myself. And that's actually a really common thing for me. I choke anytime it comes to anything remotely competitive. I choke. And I just hate that about myself. I don't like it. It's so frustrating, especially if I know I'm good at something. And it's just, I'm not good with competition, I guess. So my confidence was definitely not great, which sucks. And it didn't, help that I was having issues. I was getting bullied by my teacher, but also by other students, which, speaking of how my teacher bullied me, there was this day where, so sometimes our school would have all day recess. Basically, they would give the kids a break, and the teachers, I'm assuming, too. And basically, the kids got to just go outside and play all day. We loved those days, maybe 1 or 2 a year. And I remember one day, it wasn't around a normal class time, but my teacher had the whole class. She's like, hey, everybody line up at the door. And so we all get in the line, and everybody's like, oh, it's all day recess. We know that's what's happening. And she's like, no, we're not doing that. And so the line was still getting together, and I was like, hey, would I have time to go to the bathroom first? Well, God, me in the bathroom. I swear.
I know. The root of all your problems.
The root of evil. This is the problem. We all lined up, and I was like, would I have time to go to the bathroom before we go to whatever we're doing? She's like, yeah, go ahead. So I go to the bathroom, and I go back to the classroom, and my class is gone. And I'm like, God, I have so many abandonment issues, and like there's so many reasons why. The whole class is gone, and I'm like, oh, and like, so just little context. I was a rule follower, like by the book, goody two shoes, always did what I was told, like, there's a big strong sense of justice that comes with autism, and like I kind of felt like that was like a thing for me. I'm like, I gotta follow the rules, do the right thing, always make the right decision. And I was like, oh, they probably just went out to play. And so I like run, like I was nervous because we were told not to go outside of, like, walk down the hallway alone, ever, like never alone unless you have a reason or a specific place you're going. So I was like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't, but like I waited, and class didn't come back, and I was like, oh, I'll just go check the playground. So I run down the hall, and I go bursting out the door. Playground's empty. I was like, oh, like I didn't know where my class was, so I like panic. And so I go back to the classroom, nobody's there. And so I'm like, I end up going to the bathroom to hide, and like I keep checking the classroom and nobody comes back, and I'm too scared to walk down the hall. And I'm like, this is going on a big portion of time where there's nobody there, and I'm like, oh, I don't know where my class is. And so I start panicking, and I'm like, and there's nobody in the hall, like no teachers, nothing. And so I hide in the bathroom, and I ended up falling asleep in the bathroom. And then I would wake up, and I would check, and nobody would be there, so I would start crying, and then I would fall asleep again. And like I can't remember, I think I must have missed lunch that day, and nobody came for me. And then so
Hey, little fella.
I went outside. I went back out into the hallway, and the janitor was there. She was so sweet. She was always oh, she was so sweet. And I was like, do you know where my class is? And she like looked really like puzzled. She's like, they've been outside all day. And I was like, oh. And so by this point, it's only about like, I'd say an hour, maybe 45 minutes before buses are supposed to leave. And she's like, they've been outside all day. And I was like, okay. And like before she can ask more questions, I start running to the playground. And I get out there and like everybody's outside. And I'm just like, this has been a really tough day for me. I've been crying. Like my eyes are all puffy. So like the sun was like super bright. And I remember like thinking that. I'm like, ugh. And I see my teacher and she turns to me and she's like, where have you been? It's Deep South, so I got to do the accent. I was like, what do you mean? Where have you been? You haven't been here all day. And I was like, oh, I was in the bathroom. All day? I was like, I had to poop. And she's like, it took you all day to poop. I'm like, my dad takes a long time to poop. I must get it from him. And she's like, go out and play. And like, she got mad at me. I was gone for hours. And she did not come look for me. She didn't tell anyone. I could have been kidnapped, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And she hated me so much that she, like, just, like, let me go missing. And it was a really bad day, too, because, like, I get out to the playground and all my friends are like, where have you been? And I'm like, I didn't want to tell them. I was like, oh, I was sick or something. And at this time, I had this light up bouncy ball that we would always play with at recess. And they were like, well, we didn't know where you were, so we grabbed the ball out of your desk. And we're sorry, but we bounced it too high and it landed on top of the cafeteria. So, like, the cafeteria building went up against this concrete slab where there were basketball hoops or where you would play with chalk or balls or whatever. And that's where we would bounce my ball to see how high it would go. And they got it stuck on top of the cafeteria roof. So that was like... And so I started crying and I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, we're so sorry. And like, I couldn't get mad at them because they were sorry. And I'm just like, okay. And like, so, you know, getting anything special, like, we were so poor. I never got like much, you know, like my parents would give me what they could. But like, so having this special bouncy ball, like, I wasn't going to get it again. So I was heartbroken, but I wasn't, you know, I was like, accidents happen, but I was heartbroken. It was just a really, really bad day. It was a terrible day. And like, dude, that teacher needs to be fired. I know. Sure. I just want to preface this by saying I do understand that teachers go through a lot and they have a lot on their plates, and I have so much respect for teachers, but a lot of the teachers at my school were awful. And this teacher was terrible to me. And the fact that she let me go missing for so long, why did my mom not do something? You know? I don't know. Terrible teacher.
Yeah, because I mean, like, if you know your history with bathrooms and stuff, like, I've walked in the bathroom on you, and you've had busted open with blood everywhere. So, like, as a kid, that could have been like just the same.
You know, I think it also just upset me. And maybe I'm reading into things, but it felt intentional that it felt so intentional that I specifically was so anxious about telling her that, like, I needed to go to the bathroom. Will I have time? Like, I asked her multiple times. She's like, yes, we'll wait for you. And then they didn't. And I just feel like that's really crappy. And maybe, you know, like I said, teachers go through a lot of kids to keep up with. Maybe it just slipped her mind, but it was like, it wasn't like I was in there for like, I was literally less than 5 minutes and the class was already gone, you know, and that, I don't know. It just was crappy. And I also, like, my medical anxiety was really bad too, and this was around when I was losing teeth, you know, as kids do, like baby teeth, and like, I did have a good nurse. I will say that, oh my god, she is the kindest woman I've ever met in my life. She was the best nurse. Literally loved that woman. I even got to see her later in life when I was an adult and talk to her, and I was like, I just want you to know that you meant so much to me, you know, so I'm glad I got to talk to her, you know. And Just school in general was so much. School was just so tough for me, especially with my crappy teachers and struggling to balance home and school and religious stuff. And like, I think another weird thing that happened that year is there was like some kind of thing that I don't exactly remember. I think the teachers said somebody broke in to scare us, but basically someone wrote with like Sharpie marker on one of the shelves in my teacher's classroom, and which scared me because I'm like, somebody broke in? Like, they can just get in like that? I don't know. It scared me, and so like they were like, we're launching an investigation to figure out who did it. And so like basically the principal comes down to our class and she comes with a paddle. This, just so you guys know, they still paddled us at school. Like, this was still a thing in my school. And I don't think this, yeah, I don't think that was very much allowed in most schools, but at our school they would still
not at
paddle
all
us. Well, at ours it was. So she comes down, my principal, and she has this wooden paddle. So everybody's like, oh crap. And they're like, I don't know if we should just paddle everybody and punish everybody, or like, like they're threatening us like that. And then they basically had written down what was written on the shelf on the marker board, and they were like, everybody write it down and we'll match the handwriting to it. And I didn't think that I needed to like fake my handwriting because I knew I didn't do it, so I just write it. And so the principal's waiting out in the hall and they call my name, and I'm like, and like, so before I went out there, 2 other kids had come in crying because they got paddled because their handwriting was similar to the handwriting, or to the handwriting that was on the shelf. And like, they weren't fake paddling them. We could hear them getting paddled in the hallway. Like, they were legit getting paddled, and it was loud and it would echo, and we're all like, everybody's sweating. And I'm like, I have no problem. Like, at this point I still didn't fully understand that rules and things were, that justice wasn't an actual thing that was real, for many reasons. Don't get me on that tangent, but I just thought I would be good since I didn't do it. And so I go out there, I'm looking at this paddle and I'm looking at my principal, and I'm like, she's like, so your handwriting was really similar. I start crying. I mean, because like, the thing about getting paddled at school means I'm gonna go home and get spanked too. My parents made that very clear. You get in trouble at school, you're getting beat at home. So I'm like, I burst into tears when I get out there, and she's like, did you do this? And I'm like, I really did. I promise. Like, I'm like wallowing. I think she just felt so bad for me. Like, I think she literally just looked at me and felt so terrible for me that she just was like, I believe you. Just stop. Just go back in. And I like go in and I'm sobbing.
Get out of here.
Yeah, everybody's like, did you get spanked? And I'm like, no. Like, I go sit down. Like, just, what is that? That is like traumatic. I can't, like, what, all these little kids just terrified, it was rough, so then of course, I was just tired all the time because my weekends were spent either going out in service, we were doing yard work, chores, or cleaning, and then going to school full time, and then also going to 3 meetings a week, and I just never felt like I could rest. And religion was just so overly important to my family. This same year, I don't remember what I got. I got something nasty. I got something awful at school. I was so sick. Like, so sick. This is actually the sickness I think that gave me vertigo. I had a fever so bad. I remember laying in bed and it felt like I was on the ocean because the whole room was spinning and the bed was like moving up and down. I thought I was experiencing something demonic. I thought I was being possessed by a demon. Like, I was so sick. And religion was so freaking important that, so Jehovah's Witnesses every year have what's called the memorial, where we it's in the spring near Easter where we celebrate Jesus's death. And I should not have been going out anywhere. My mom dragged me to the memorial. She's like, you will go to this memorial. It doesn't matter. This happens once a year. It's more important than you being sick. I can't fathom doing that to my kid if they were, oh God, I was so sick. And so, like, I'm put in under these fluorescent lights in this seat. It wasn't like we went and then just got home immediately. Like, we went early. I had to sit there. Everybody's, like, looking at me like I'm like a zoo animal or something, you know. Everybody's like, why are you there, like, all in all these blankets and pillows? I'm sure I looked like death, because I certainly felt like it, and I refused to hide how miserable I was. I wanted every single person in that place to know I was miserable as heck. I was like, everybody needs to know, which my mom got mad at me for. She's like saying I'm being dramatic, you know, but I don't understand how stupid religious stuff is more important than your kid's health. That just really bothers me. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm
yeah, it makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't know. And then holidays came like a huge problem at school too. Like, because, you know, my brother and I weren't allowed to celebrate holidays, and my mom fortunately told them, you know, at the start of this year that I wasn't allowed to do holidays or the Pledge of Allegiance, so I didn't have that guilt anymore. I didn't
don't
think
need that again.
We don't need that again. And our teachers really just didn't want to make accommodations for us. They were very bothered by it. Like, a good example of this, so the elementary school was going to put on a show for, like, parents to come to where everybody sang Christmas carols, you know, some cute things with the kids. And obviously my brother and I couldn't participate. But the problem with this was they would have, like, I can't remember if it was a few times a week or every day, but basically at least a few times a week we would have to go to the gym to practice the Christmas carols. Obviously my brother and I couldn't participate. So instead of, like, finding somewhere for us to go, they would have the whole school, they would make my brother and I wait, they would have the whole school sat down in the chairs in the gym, and then they would bring us out in front of everybody, and then they would be like, so my name and my brother's name, these two don't want to share in the holiday joy, so they're not going to be joining us for this. And then they would make us sit in the bleachers and the, like, in front of all the kids, and everybody, like, they made it like we were, like, anti-Christian or anti-Jesus, anti-Christmas. Deep South, not a good vibe. And so all the kids are looking at us like we're just a-holes. And so we're just like, I would just feign, like, oh, I don't care, I'm, like, a cool kid, like, a rebel. And then I would, like, get alone and just cry, because it was so humiliating. And, like, I would try to hide my tears, and I would just, like, get as close to my brother as possible, which at this time, he's like, ew, no, you're my little sister, no, like, get away from me. I don't know, it was really tough. And then, like, we would also have music class, which was around holiday stuff, and, like, usually what would happen there is I would get sent to it was like this weird room that I had never been to. I remember it just being super white, and it would feel like a punishment, because they wouldn't give me activities. They were like, go sit in this room, basically, and think about what you're doing, like, kind of feeling like that. It felt like a punishment, and I was told to just wait there, and I could still hear the music, and, like, I was convinced that even if I just heard the music, that meant I was participating, or that was a way for, like, the demons to, like, get to me, because my mom would tell me that, like, Christmas trees, like, under the Christmas tree branches, there were demons, and, like, so I'm just fully convinced that I'm, like, naked out here getting, like, exposed to demons and stuff, you know? It was awful. Oh my God. I wish I could hug little me. And, you know, another problem with that teacher too is, like, we did this, like, picture thing for our parents that we made, and they were having all the kids take a picture in front of, like, a fake American flag. And, you know, I made it very clear to my teacher. I was like, hey, you know, I can't have the flag in my picture. She's like, oh, okay, that's fine. Don't worry. We won't get it in the picture. And she kind of like moved me, but barely. And I was like, is it in the picture? I was so stressing about this. I'm like, please make sure. And I kept asking her, I'm like, is it in the picture? She's like, no, it's fine. She lied. She took a picture of me with the flag in the background. And I just was so worked up over this. Like, because, you know, I just didn't understand how it all worked. And I thought anything at all like that meant I was just anti-Jehovah and I was a bad person. And I like cried and took the picture, and like, because we made picture frames and put the picture in it, and it like you could put it on the fridge. And I like got home and I was crying and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not anti-Jehovah. Like, they made me. And my mom's like, well, it's okay, you can't really see it. And she put it up on the fridge anyway, but every time I saw it, I felt like I was just heinous. I just
like
thought,
just flashbacks.
I was like, it was. I was like, I would see it and I'm like, I failed Jehovah that day. I was fighting for my life, dude. I really was. And like, you know, I took everything so literally. Like, that's, you know.
You still do.
It's a neurodivergent thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
That's why I would just take things so freaking literally that, like, to me, I'm like, oh, man, I'm not, like, because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that basically there's, like, an apocalypse gonna come called Armageddon, and he's gonna get rid of all evil people, you know. He reads people's hearts, whether they're good or bad, and I'm already like, I've been doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and now
I'm taking pictures with the flag,
and I'm listening to Christmas music, even though I don't want to, you know, because I would like, when I'd hear the Christmas music, I would cover my ears and like hum and like squeeze my eyes shut, because I was like, as little as possible in, you know, it didn't work, you know, but I would, I'm sad for little me, but I don't know. I also started like this weird collection that year. I would like collect little like paper clips or like little chunks of erasers or like little things that I would find, like little trinkets. I think this is a form of fidget toy for me. I would make these like little things, like sculptures out of things that I would find, and I never told anybody about it. Like, this was just a little me thing, and I would keep it in my desk, and I would play with them, and it would soothe me. But I had a huge role not to take it outside, because I was absolutely convinced that if I took it outside because I had metal in my pocket, I'd get struck by lightning and die. That was like fully convinced. And I also had a really hard time. I would not look at clouds or look at the sky, because I remember reading in the Bible that like people saw Jehovah's face in the clouds and they died on the spot. So like I had a really hard time with that. I would be like, I don't know, maybe it's gonna rain, I can't look, it looks dark out here, but like I can't look at the sky because I might see Jehovah's face and I might die. I was really struggling. I was fighting for my life. And the icing on the cake for that year, I had the kid next to me in class. He whipped his penis out and flashed me during class, and that was actually really upsetting. I thought I was a whore, and I thought that meant that God would hate me because I felt unclean, and I didn't feel safe enough to tell my teacher because she hated me, and I thought she would blame me or I would get in trouble. And I don't really blame the kid, because I know that he was I don't remember. I think he may have also been autistic. But I think he had more needs than I did, and he struggled with some other things too. Like, he thought every day was like April Fool's Day. Like, and my teacher, I also kind of like felt bad about getting him in trouble, because my teacher hated him because he was different too. So like it was multiple reasons why I never told anyone, but I literally, that traumatized me. I was like, oh God. So second grade was really tough, and I'll get more into this this is a very long episode. There are a few more things I wanted to talk about. You know, things at the Kingdom Hall were kind of getting dicey. We were getting abused very badly by the people in this congregation, and it just made trouble for me and everything, because, like, I caught feelings for another boy that was there. He was friends with my brother Stone, but they were also part of the evening family that I've talked about. But, oh my god, we were in love with each other. We were little kids. We were so in love with each other. And, like, even to the point, like, his mom would joke that we were going to get married someday, which my mom was like, absolutely not, never going to happen. She hated that. She's like, absolutely not. I refuse to let that ever happen. I think it was because they were rich, but like I said, they also did a lot of messed up stuff to our family. And, I mean, his dad specifically was not a great person. Like, he would brag, and he called himself the Axeman, because he was, like, really great at catching people doing things that were against a religion, and he took pride in disfellowshipping people, which disfellowshipping is excommunication from the religion. Like, basically null and voids your baptism. If you're disfellowshipped, nobody can talk to you. It is literally against the rules. You can get in trouble yourself for that. If you're disfellowshipped, that's it. You're cut off. You can still attend meetings, but you can't talk to people. And just not a nice thing, and he was not a nice guy. And this family had a lot of issues, and the problem is they had the money to hide it. They would get into illegal stuff, and, like, they could hide it. Like, I remember one of the people in that congregation had a really bad alcohol problem. They could get him out of his DUIs, whatever, like, they swept it under the rug because they had the money and they owned that town. I can't remember all the details that happened there, and I will talk about some more of the stuff of what I can remember. I was just very young. A lot of what happened was very messed up. I mean, to the point that, like, even a part of their family, like, whenever everything was kind of breaking down, like, we left that congregation when I was around 11, and I remember my mom talked to a different, like, basically the black sheep part of their family. They, like, pulled my mom aside, and I remember I was there, and she got, like, in her face, and she's like, listen to me. Do not mess with this family. They are like the mafia. They will ruin your life. Get away from them. That's pretty scary.
Definitely.
How many red flags did my mom need to, like, leave this religion? I mean, oh my god. And
I mean, how long did it take her to leave your dad? I mean, like,
22 years. So yeah, who are we kidding?
She's probably as colorblind as you are with flags.
Hey, I'm better than she is. Okay.
No, you're colorblind.
Oh, for real, yeah, I am a little colorblind.
Yeah, that's what it means.
I also am trying to learn what red flags look like. You know, if anybody's slightly nice to me, that's a step up from how I was treated as a kid. So yeah, my parents chose to stay in the religion, and it was a lot for my brother and I. My brother and I don't talk anymore. I'll discuss that whenever we get to that point. I wish I knew more of what it was like for him, because he was very cut off from his emotions. He wouldn't talk about his feelings. And I wish I knew, you know, and I've felt guilty my whole life for not being there more for him. I tried. I'm just, like, so tired of feeling guilty, though.
It's not your fault.
I felt so guilty for everything growing up, you know, about this religion. Everything in it made me feel guilty. My parents made me feel guilty, you know. I literally, anything that I liked or enjoyed as a kid was overanalyzed for how it could be evil or demonic, and it taught me how to I just analyzed every little part of myself, and I would pray all the time about how every little thing about me was wrong, and I was sorry, like, all the time. It just, at some point, it turned into less of praying for forgiveness for my sins and praying more for my existence, and just apologizing for how it's just me. For me. I was apologizing for me. And, it was a sad little childhood. And I wish I could just grab little me up and just love me, better. But
that's what we're working on and now.
Yeah, that's what we're working on. We're healing little tiny baby me, and
that cute little fella.
I do want to say that a lot of this is actually really sad. I don't know if you guys have read or heard of the series of unfortunate events, how they're like, none of this is good. It's all sad. Yeah, it's pretty much my whole childhood. I do have to say that if you're someone that maybe is going through something similar or has been traumatized and it feels very bleak and it was all very bleak, I just want to say that I am not going to lie to you and say that it's perfect or that it's easy or that I'm happy 100% of the time, but there is another side to it. Like, you can get to the other side, and there are good people on the other side. I was told for so long that outside the religion there were no good people, but I have found good people, my partner included, and just get through it. And on the other side, I promise, there are good people and good days and good things. And I'm not going to say that the healing is easy. It's not. It's honestly exhausting and hard and difficult and scary. But there are better days. I promise. And just be kind to yourself and take care of yourself. And love yourself. Just love yourself. You are worth it. And I think this is where we're gonna end the episode. I just it does get better. I like I said, I'm not gonna lie. It's not easy necessarily, but is it worth it? Yes. It is worth it. It is worth it. And you owe it to yourself and to little you and to future you to make it to those good times. And it has taken me 3 decades to get there, but we're coming out on the other side. And like I said, I know there's a lot of sad stuff that I'm discussing here, but we'll get to the good stuff too. And I hope that you guys take care, and I appreciate you for watching. I know this episode was way longer, double the size than usual, but there was a lot to cover, and I felt like it all kind of needed to be covered now. And I just appreciate you guys for listening and for being here. I'm really grateful that I get to do this and that I'm capable of doing this, and I just hope that maybe, even if it's just one person out there, that my words can find you and make you feel a little less alone. Because you're not alone and you don't deserve to feel alone. But I will catch you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. I will tag my partner's channel in the description link, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.
Bye, guys.